Good afternoon, everybody. I was ready to go at 5 o'clock, but it turns out it was actually 5:15, and that means that indeed we have a cool house. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Bert Hoffman. I'm the director of the East Asian Institute and one of the organizers here. The other organizer is the Center for Asia and Globalization at the Kuan School of Public Policy, and I'm very pleased to see so many of you. This is an important question that we're discussing today. Where's China's economy going? And the question in the title of the talk was, is China's slowdown a cyclical issue or a structural issue? Now, Yao Yang has his own opinion, and I'll introduce him in a moment. But the government yesterday decided that it was cyclical because they have announced a very, very big stimulus for the remaining months of this year. Right? I'm sure Professor Yao Yang is going to explain to us how they're going to do that. But there are serious issues in the Chinese economy, in part because, China is getting richer, not rich, but getting richer. And second, the exit out of COVID wasn't as smooth as one could imagine. And third, there's a lot of uncertainty about the long-term policy directions that the current administration is taking China. So lots of issues that affect confidence and affect the economy. And the question is what will come next. And there's no one better to talk about this than Professor Yao Yang. I mean, there's lots of people that talk about the Chinese economy. And they're either great economists but don't know much about China, or they know a lot about China but perhaps not the greatest economist. Well, Professor Yao Yang is both. He's a great economist that knows the Chinese economy very well. Professor Yao Yang is the Liberal Arts Chair Professor at the China Center for Economic Research, the CCER, and he's also the Dean of the National School of Development and the Director of the CCER itself. He is also the editor of the China Economic Journal. He's widely published. He's published more than 100 articles in his career, including in the very high-quality journals such as the American Economic Journal and the American Economic Review and the American Political Science Review. And he published also and edited almost a dozen books on institutional economics, political economy, and he was also contributed to the East Asian Institute's latest publication on the future of the Communist Party of China. Dr. Yao was awarded the 2008 and the 2014 Sun Yat-sen Award, which is indeed an award for the best economics work in China, and so that signifies him as one of the top journals. He obtained his bachelor's in geography, in geography in 1986 and an MS in economics both from Peking University, and he has his PhD from University of Wisconsin-Madison back in 1996. Professor Yao Yang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bert. It's a great thing to come back to the Lee Kuan Yew School after 5 years. I remember last time I was here, it was 5 years ago. That's incredible. So the pandemic really separated us for too long. So it's so happy to be able to come back. Right? So I want to talk about the Chinese economy, but not from kind of a Euro approach. Right? Like talk about the drivers, economic growth in China, or the prospects of China's growth, but more or less to answer key questions, right? That is whether China's slowdown has been structural, like many foreign observers, like Paul Krugman, has always been saying that, right? Or is just a cyclical, or is being caused by other issues like political issues. Okay, so that's my talk. Right? I cannot see this, but anyway, I can just tell it. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So if you read the top news, say, New York Times. So I got those from New York Times. You look at the title. It's all pessimistic about the Chinese economy. One of the titles says, how do we manage China's decline? Decline, not a recession, but decline, right? So many people, including Paul Krugman, predicted that China is going to be like Japan in the 1990s on a secular path of decline. Okay, they listed many causes like the dilemma of thrift, aging, with worsening international environment, like our confidence also since. So that's kind of the common sentiment. I would say not just outside China, but to a large extent also inside China. So confidence is at a historical low. But I would like to say that most of the causes listed here are actually not the causes for China's slowdown. China's economy is still robust. Let's think about the consumption first, right? Many people say, China has consumed too little and saved too much. But if you look at consumption after 2010, you see this is actually quite dramatic increase of share of consumption. Okay, on average, every year there is an increase of 0.8% points. Okay, so the pandemic stopped this increase. China's saving rate went back by 2 percentage points, but overall, share of consumption is coming back. Right? Of course, China's saving rate is still high, but that doesn't mean that China is going to stay at the very low consumption rate. Okay. What about the aging? Many people say, look, China, just like Japan in the 1990s, aging faster than Japan. China's population is declining. China's labor force has been declining for about 10 years now. Okay. So many people say that's a problem. But we have to factor in other things here into our equation. One is what I call the advantage of backwardness, right? Becoming old before we become rich. Many people say that's bad, but actually that's good, right? Because we still have low income. Our per capita income is only 1/6 of Americans. For that matter, 1/6 of Singapore's. Okay? So people still have that inner drive, right, to seek for higher income. I still drive a large car. That shows that I'm still young in my heart, all right? It also just shows that Chinese people are still young in their hearts. Another factor is AI, automation, okay? So it's actually the government is more worried about unemployment than worry about lack of labor. Right? So youth unemployment rate is 22% now. Okay? So in the near future, that's going to be the major problem. Why the major problem for the government? Okay? And don't forget about education. Okay? Education makes up the loss of the labor force. So this is my studies. Right? So you look at the schooling years, young people have much higher schooling years than older people, and also the quality of their education is much higher. So if you look at this rate adjusted the schooling years, young people are twice as productive as those guys who are going to retire. Okay, so I really don't think aging is going to be a huge drag on China's economic growth. Okay. What about the external environment? Is the world leaving China alone? I don't think so. Right? So this so-called decoupling actually is not happening. I was in Germany, and we went to a factory run by Robert Bosch, the Bosch company. And finally, I understood what it meant by Europeans de-risking. It's really different from decoupling. Right? It's clear, right? Decoupling means we are going to leave China, right? But in the case of Bosch, no. Bosch maintains a factory operation in China, but in the meantime, opened a facility, a factory in Dresden. Okay, huge. But it also bought a factory in Silicon Valley, producing semiconductors. Right? So this is a de-risking. De-risking means I put the eggs in different baskets, not in China or in China. But that doesn't mean business are leaving China. Okay. What else? I don't think I have a lot of time to talk about Huawei or so. But you all know that America's decoupling efforts in the technological front is not succeeding. Okay, that's why United States is always increase its export control on China. I don't think it's going to succeed. In terms of trade, China now is the third largest trading partner with the U.S., but that's only by the total value of export. So China actually rewrote its export through ASEAN countries, through Mexico. Okay, so here I actually adopt data from two American economists. So they show here that this is Vietnam share and Mexico's share of imports, and China the share grew so much. Okay, which means that China is diverting export through those countries into the United States. So I have a conjecture, if we take a value added, China's export to U.S. has not declined. So America's trade dependence on China has not decreased that much. Okay. And don't forget about China's technological progress. Right? So AI, alternative energy, EVs, China is at the forefront of the world technological front. Okay. Now for future technology, China does not lag behind. Fusion, quantum computing, quantum communication, and also the new semiconductor technology, photonic semiconductors. China does not lag behind, right? So factor all this in, I really don't think that China is on the road to a secular decline. Okay. As a matter of fact, I still believe China economy has a huge potentials. Okay. And my own calculation shows that in the next few years, China's potential growth rate is still going to be 5% to 5.5%. Okay. So then that's the question, right? Why in the last, say, 7 years, 8 years, we have seen China going through this bumpy road of economic growth, right? 1 year boom, 1 year burst. Okay. So that's the question. Okay. So that's the major part of my talk today. I'm going to explain this, right? My thesis is that it's because the party, particularly the President Xi Jinping himself, wants to correct the problems that have accumulated through the reform and opening period of time. And those correcting actions have long-term benefits for China, or are going to create long-term benefits for China. But on the other hand, they are creating short-term fluctuations to the Chinese economy. Okay, so that's my explanation why Chinese economy has a potential, but in the meantime, we see this bumpy road for China in the last few years. Okay. So let me then go into, let me see how much time there. Okay. So let me first talk about the reform era. Right? This is kind of according to my interpretation, how to separate the different stages in the PRC history. I'm quite inspired by those two books. The first book, The Fourth Turning, written by two authors, but one of them died. Bill Strauss died. And then, the other author wrote a new book about the American Fourth Turning coming. Okay, I'm not going to get into the details of those two books, but I have been inspired by the two books. So, PRC history can be divided into 4 periods. Right? One is the mouse period, and so what we can call, according to the two authors, high period. High period means almost every person in a society thinks in the same way. For example, in the 1950s, every American believes the United States is on the right track, right? And everyone subscribes to the same objective, that the United States is going to become the leader of the free world. And then, of course, living standards were rising so fast, right? And in China, at least in the 1950s, that was the same. New China. New China means that everyone subscribes to the same idea, that is socialist China, new China, right? National rejuvenation, okay? But of course, there were a lot of problems, right, in a later stage. But still, we can say that's a high period. Then we can come into the first 20 years of reform and opening. That's Deng Xiaoping's period of time. It's very interesting. Deng Xiaoping died in 1997, exactly 20 years after reform and opening. I moved reform and opening 2 years before the regular timing, 1978, I say 1976, because Mao died in a year. Okay. So then we enter the next 20 years. Right, that's the first 20 years can be called awakening, great awakening. My generation is the generation of 1980s. We can never forget that period of time, right? That's a whole liberation, soul and heart, every aspect. Right? You ask me what's the best time for China? Of course, the 1980s, for sure. Although living standard at that time was quite low. But spiritually, it was the best time for us, young people, right? Then we came to the next period, that's the reveling period, a period of indeterminacy, right? So everything was kind of unfolding. China didn't have a direction, only marketization, but where will marketization lead China to, we don't know at that period of time. Right? So I put the end of that period to 2017. And 2018, we really enter a new era. Okay? So in their book, they call this period the crisis period. Crisis means you need a big solution. Right? Clean up the house, and then you're going to build a new order for the country. United States, the same. China here, the same probably. Right? A new order is going to emerge from the next 20 years. Okay? And in China, I call this a period of correction. Why put 2018 as the starting point and not 2012? Because 2018, we changed the constitution. Okay? So that's the real Xi Jinping period that came. Okay. So let me then go very quickly what's going. I think everyone in this room probably know very well what was going on in that period of time. But here I just want to emphasize, pick up some main points over there. What is the opening? Reform and opening. What is the opening? Opening is not just open to foreign business. I think more important, like I said, at least for my generation, is open to the world. New ideas. We read every book we could find at that time. Most of the books were translated from the West. Okay, so that's very important. Okay, and then domestically, what's reform? Reform means that everything goes, basically, or to make it a case that everything goes, right? So that's reform means we got more personal freedom. Okay, so that's the first 20 years. But I also want to emphasize at that period of time, China was not a conventional developing country, right? What is a conventional developing country? Political monopoly, business political alliance, where high inequality, it's just a name in it. All the vices that you can imagine for a country, right? But China didn't have those things at that time. Why? First, because Mao just crashed all the classes, leveled out the whole society, right? In a sense, everyone was made equal, okay? Socially, no super class, no lower class, everyone was just equal. And also, it was the beginning of reform and opening, and people suddenly were united, right? And people thought that, China is opening a new chapter, right? So, first, we didn't have time to develop, the social ladders. And on the other hand, we thought almost in the same way, same direction, and acted in the same direction. Okay. But in the second 20 years, things changed quite a lot. Okay. Of course, on the brighter side, reform were deepening. People got more freedom. Markets were just enlarging. But in the meantime, China became a conventional developing country. Okay, corruption, business, political alliance, high inequality. Actually, I said this 15 years ago. I said that China was on the way to become a conventional developing country. Okay, all the bad things. Right? So that's why, at least in the Xi Jinping era, the new so-called new era, when we think back, right, what were the problems at that time? First, I can see that in my eyes on that. Alarming inequality. What's the level of inequality in China? The lower 10% of population only own 0.5% of total income. If we look at the net asset, netted, what about the top 10%? Top 10% own 35% of total income, 67% of total wealth. Right? That's the inequality over there. Okay. And the corruption. Okay. It was a huge disease at that time, and even today. Okay. So that's a huge problem. Political business alliance, right? That's another huge problem. I would just say that the business people in China all have this. I'm sorry, I forget about the fragmentation of the party. I was called the 九龙治水. So in the standing committee, there are 9 people, right? And everyone was like a dragon. And everyone was in charge of specific field. Okay? Other people could not mix up with them. Right? So, at the word top, the party was fragmented. Okay, that caused a lot of problems. Real problem, I tell you. Okay? At one point, we almost entered domestic conflicts. Okay? 10 years ago. Okay? That's the problem. And then political business, nice, Hu Xueyan. Hu Xueyan was a businessman at the late Qin dynasty. He was a businessman, but in the meantime, he was appointed government official. Right? The really high-ranking government official. But of course, he died miserably. But, many Chinese business people don't remember his miserable ending. Only remember his glorious history, right? The successful businessman, that in the meantime, a successful government official, and waged a huge amount of money to swing the government. Okay? Today, many business people still have that dream. Then excessive commercialization, that's also a huge problem. I'm not going to go through the list, but just to pick up one, educational sector, because 2 years ago there was a huge campaign to get rid of those extracurricular training programs, training companies, all right? I don't know the situation in Singapore, but in China, it's almost kind of two parallel systems. So one in school, the other one is in the business, right? So K-12 in school, then K-12 extracurricular. Okay, that's so bad. The current generation of young people are not like my generation. They are less political, and also they are less active in thinking. That we're good at taking exams. That's destroy China's future. And Xi Jinping actually said this, that because that destroys China's future, so we have to control it. Okay. All right, so with that, what the new era is going to do, of course, right? In the mind of the newer leaders, particularly in Xi Jinping's mind, those problems are so bad. If we allow them to move on, then we are going to lose the country in the future. We're not going to have growth, so we're not going to have a unified party, and not going to have a healthy society, right? But to correct those problems, rule of law is not enough. So we have to use campaigns, okay? Right? So that's why we have the anti-corruption campaign, okay? Now 10 years. No, not even 10 years, now entering 11 years, okay? How many people have been prosecuted? 4.25 million. Okay, so what does that mean? Put into perspective, the number of Communist Party members is close to 90 million, which means 5% of party members have been prosecuted. And the number of public servants in China is less than 9 million, so which means half of government officials have been prosecuted. That's a lot of people. But still not enough, right? In the first half year, in this year, how many people prosecuted? 258,000 people have been prosecuted, right? It's actually higher than the average in the last 10 years. Okay? I become really pessimistic about how the perspective to eradicate corruption in China. Probably it's indeed in our blood. Bad elements, right, in our blood. We have to clean up our blood. Restoring authority of the party. Okay. How to restore the authority of the party? First, in the center, right? Among those 9 people, we have to have, in Chinese we say banzhang, the person in charge, who's going to have the final word, right? So that's why we need to change the constitution, okay? So we can guarantee there will be a true leader over there. They're not going to have 9 leaders in charge of different things, because otherwise the party is going to go broken, okay? And in the whole country, how to make those party members close to 90 million, all right? To listen to the center inspection teams every 3 years, right? I'm dean, right? So in the last 3 years, we have received 2 type inspections, okay? So it's just like, The last one was just finished last year. No problem, we start a new one. So we just finish a new one. Okay? So for that matter, I read Xi Jinping's writings, speech a lot. Right? I try I used to say we have to read and also to digest his writings. So you can take this as the outcome of my reading, right? I think I'm truly reading his stuff, not superficial. Okay. Okay. But of course, if you do this, there will be problems, right? So so-called 躺平. If you drive the screw harder, then people say, oh, okay, finally, I understand. Right? Listen to the top. I'm not going to have any initiative. Okay. Another one is to remove political business alliances. You see this so-called anti-monopoly investigation. I tell you, it's not about the monopoly in China. Okay? It's about the political business alliance. Those big tech companies have a lot of money, have a lot of power, and they want to use this power politically. That's not allowed. Okay? Of course, that sends short waves, right, into the sector. And same thing we can say about the financial sector. Right? One example is Xiao Jianhua, right, as a PKU graduate. So he was stealing money out of China, a lot, tunneling. You know what? At the surface, he owned about 22% of Baoshan Yinhang, right? A kind of a commercial bank, a city commercial bank. But after he was arrested, it was turned out he owned 92% of Baoshan Yinhang. Basically, that's his family bank. He used that bank to tunnel money out of China. Okay? So that's the kind of corruption out there. So that's why anti-corruption drive went into the financial sector. And not just that, Xiao Jianhua used his financial resources, right, trying to move politics. Correcting excessive commercialization, including the financial sector, including local government's debts, right? So that's why we see, this huge swings in the economic sector. Okay, I'm not saying that all the actions are on the right track, but the objective definitely is the direction for China to go. Okay. But of course, that's going to create problems, right? So the Chinese economy has to bear some cost. Here I give you an example of the housing sector, because excessive debts in the housing sector has been a huge concern. Okay, so starting from 2021, there was I should also call it a campaign, right, to deliver the housing sector. So you see the results, huge decline over the last 2.5, almost 3 years now, right? And that, of course, caused a lot of problems in the real economy because the housing sector is so big, 17% of GDP. Okay, so if each year it declined by 10%, then you get rid of 1.7% of GDP. Okay. All right. So another one is the eradication of the poverty and the common prosperity. I think this is deeply in Xi Jinping's mind. You have to think about his experience when he was in Shanbei, right, for more than 10 years. He went there at the age of 14 years old. And then he came back to Beijing 10 years later. Most of his youth time was spent in sheer poverty. Like me, I also go back to my home village at least once a year. Actually, I don't want to go. Why? I don't want to see the poverty. It's just a sheer poverty. It's not just a different world. It's a different universe. Different universe. People have different life, different everything you can imagine. Okay? Right? So common prosperity is going to be a huge theme in the next several decades for China, I think. Right. So I want to leave more time for discussion, Q&A, so I run very quickly, but let me then conclude my talk. Raising some questions, right? So first is, can campaign style actions solve all the problems, right? That's actually the question in many people's mind, okay? On the one hand, I believe campaigns are needed, particularly for corruption, right? Even after 10 years of a campaign, we still cannot eradicate corruption in China, right? But on the other hand, can those campaigns change people's behavior, long-term behavior? That's also a question in my mind, right? If corruption is kind of in our culture, probably it needs a long time, right, to correct that. Rule of law, right? I don't know. So that's my question. And also, short-term pains may have long-term consequences, particularly in the economy, right? So we have this up and downs. One of the consequences is people lose confidence in the economy or even in the government, right? Because if they become a little bit more optimistic, then there is a burst, right? Then they lose confidence. So after several rounds, then people probably are going to lose confidence in the long run. That's also the question in my mind, okay? Right. Another question is, like I said, in the next 20 years, in U.S. and in China, probably both countries, and in many other countries, we are going to create a new order. The whole world is in a period of adjustment, right? So the two authors call crisis period. So after 40 years of liberalization, also in the West, right? Individualism, so-called liberal ideas, right? Where are we going to go, right? That's the same question in China. But the current direction for China seems like at least spiritually, we're going to go back to the 1950s, right? So we're going to have kind of unified ideas, unified actions, and a unified objective. Would that be possible? I actually have a doubt. I have a doubt because the Communist Party does not have a theory, right? If you really want to go back to the 1950s, you have to create a theory that most people believe in. In the 1950s, the Communist Party had a theory, okay, Marxism, right, and a clear objective. That objective is not just China is going to become great. That objective is that China is going to become an equal, prosperous society. That's about a good society, not just a rich society, right? People are concerned about a good society, right? In every society, okay? So in this case, I think if the party really wants to create a new high period in China, then the party has to create a new theory. Definitely that theory is not Marxism. So that here I say the party is kind of in a trilemma, right? I don't think many people still believe in Marxism. It's obsolete. I actually wrote this in Chinese, no problem. Okay, Xi Jinping also read them, I believe. Okay, Marxism is obsolete in most cases, but of course I still believe in Marxism ideal. No problem with that, right? Communism is a spirit. That is to create a free and all-round developer person. Who's going to object this objective? No one, right? We all want to become stronger and become our own agent, control our own life, okay? But in terms of all the practical stuff, Marxism proposed, and all obsolete. Right? In practice, the party actually has followed the Chinese tradition. But guess what? We cannot openly say a certain part of the Chinese tradition, particularly the political tradition, loudly. For example, I wrote a book on Confucianism, right? Or Confucian politics 3 years ago. It's still, the book cannot be published. Okay? Published, I'm sorry. Right? It's still very hard. I hope, one publication house now has taken our book. I hope this publishing house dares to publish that book. Right? So because, in China, at least in the official discourse, the Communist Party is still anti-tradition party. Can you believe it? Okay? Right? It's a revolutionary party. Right? We should not go back to the old Chinese tradition, particularly Confucianism. Because Confucianism has been regarded as backward, supporting feudal rule, supporting tyranny, Okay? But in practice, the party has followed the Confucian teachings. Okay? As third, when the party speaks out to outside the world, the party does not have its own language. So it has to adopt the democratic language. Right? Using democratic language to describe China, not many people believe it. And so that's why I say the party is kind of in a dilemma. The way out, for me, is only the second, right? To acknowledge the Chinese tradition, but of course with some adjustments to Marxism or Marxist ideal. Okay, not Marxism itself, but the ideal. Okay, but that's going to take a long time. Okay, let me stop here, and hopefully we are going to have some dialogue here. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing these thoughts, some of them very profound. Others, I'm hopeful for your book, because this just started a series on Marx meets Confucius on CCTV, a 5-part series. So I'm very hopeful that your combination of Marx and Confucianism will gain some grounds. And of course, for those of you who don't know, the contribution to the AI book was actually the Sinification of Marxism as a title, and I thought that was a very interesting thought on that. So you sound overall relatively optimistic. There's Jörg Woodke here in the room who just published the European Chamber always publishes these very thick books on with lots of issues that the Europeans see, and then Jörg still invests $10 billion in China. So it's this diversity in opinions, I would say. But let's focus on the questions. If you have a question, please use a mic. That's one. You have to get a mic. I'm sorry. Identify yourself and keep your question brief. 1 question per person, please, not 3 questions. If there's another round, if there's not enough questions, I can always come back to you. Thank you. Please.
Good to see you again. Yeah, I'm supposed to visit you in Beijing tomorrow, but sick. So my question is about the last. Oh, I'm Ed Arado from the Lee Kuan Yew School. My question is about the theoretical trilemma. I'm sure there's a buzz among the Chinese intellectuals yourself to contribute to shape this trilemma. My question is, where is this debate going? And I'm sure the CCP also has its in-house theoretician, the Fudan professor. And I wonder what are his thoughts in resolving this theoretical trilemma.
We can get some word. There's a gentleman in the suit in the back, but you do need to get to a mic, please.
Hi, Professor Yao. Thanks for the brilliant presentation. My name is Amos Chen. I am an MPA student at the school from China. My question is, when during your presentation you mentioned about the terms of era of correction, and I'm wondering whether there is a guiding theory of like how they plan to consolidate the power from independence, and for example, they are trying to consolidate. We're seeing evidence of consolidation of power in jurisdiction, in monetary policies, and so on and so forth. And if there is a guiding theory on like how they plan to proceed on those consolidation of power, and if there is such a theory, is the theory publicly available to open access? Thank you.
Maybe a third? Please, here in front.
Thanks, Prof. Yao and Prof. Bert, for your presentation. So I have I'm Kaiser from
Your name, please.
Okay. So my name is Kaiser, and I'm a student from LKY school as well. So my question is a very brief one. Do you think the Belt and Road Initiative is a part of this correction process?
Yes. So, yeah, because the first two questions are all about theories, right? In China, almost every university actually has a school of Marxism. Supposedly they should do this work. But unfortunately, it's so difficult for those Marxist theories to jump out of the box, to create a really new theories, because their language, even their language, has been freed by Marxism. Okay? So it's really hard for them to provide any theoretical innovation. Okay? So most likely, innovation is going to be done by outsiders, people like me, right? For the second question, is there a theory for consolidation of power? No, it's just a merit, right? So if you want to finish all the work, you have to consolidate the power, okay? So if you read the documents, we are going to build a rule of law society by 2035. Okay? So that's kind of the objective, which means before that, rule of law is going to be gradually built up. Okay. BRI, no, BRI is a separate thing. Okay, I don't think it is related to the correction. This year is the 10th anniversary of BRI, right? I myself believe BRI was a brilliant idea. Okay, so at least for the first time, China showed the first card. The United States has to respond to it. Okay, in the past, the United States always showed the card first, then China had to respond. Okay, so it's a brilliant strategy, right? But of course, there have been some problems. I think the government has realized those problems, and it has been addressing the BRI problem.
All right, second round, we have a question there.
Thank you, Professor. And my name is Han Yongxin from China. I'm also an MPP junior in LKY SPP. And my question is, you mentioned that the correction results has a lot of results, and in one aspect, it results in the weakening labor market, and such as the high employment in China now. So I wonder whether you have any prediction on how long the decline will last or affect the current labor market. Thank you.
In the middle, and then we go to the back. Right for it, please.
Hi, Prof. Yao. This is William from the Azure Competitiveness Institute in LKY SPP. Okay. My question is, because some economists says that one of the reasons of the China's slowdown is that because people lack of the confidence, and they have pessimistic expectations. And my question is that what can Chinese government do to enhance the people's confidence and let people to are willing to spend some money to consume our investment? Thank you.
I think you read my paper on it. Please, in the back.
Thank you, Prof. Yao, for a very good lecture. I'm Liu Yang from LK1, I'm a PhD student. And my question is very brief. So the pandemic has inflicted the very huge losses on the China's economy. So in a post-COVID era, do you think all these corrections conducted by the current administration will be reversed and go back to the old path? Because these corrections, as you mentioned, may kind of harm the economy, and now economic growth is listed as the top priority again. Thank you.
Okay. I don't think unemployment is related to the corrections. It's youth unemployment has been mostly a result of the pandemic. Okay. But how long were this lost? I think yesterday's announcement will probably help, right? So the government announced a huge stimulus package of 3.7 trillion. Okay, that's actually huge. Plus 1.5 trillion announced 2 months ago. Adding together, that's a 5.2 trillion. It's a huge stimulus package, and supposedly we need to spend those money in a matter of 3 months. So I hope this is going to be a strong booster for the Chinese economy. Okay, my guess is that by the end of the year, the Chinese economy is going to be stabilized. And if the government is not going to reverse its expansionary policy, then next year Chinese economy is going to be much better. Okay. Lack of confidence. There are many issues related. One is economic growth, short-term growth, right? If the Chinese economy comes back, then of course business are going to have their confidence back, right? But of course, another one is the theory. I think theory is a long-term issue, right? Because the party doesn't have a right theory to explain what it has done and what is good about China, right? So then it has to rely on Marxism, right? And if you stick with Marxism, then people will say, oh, hey, one day we are going to have public ownership, right? So we are going to surround all our assets to the government. Of course, no one is going to have long-term confidence. Okay, so that's why I believe theory is important. Okay, will correction being finished very soon? I don't know. I look at the corruption. I'm really pessimistic. All right. So we still have new corruption cases coming out. You know what? The corruption age has become so young. those people who were born in the 90s began to steal from the government and take a bribery. But they are rich enough, so they don't need the money, so they use the money to play video games. Can you believe it? Right? So it's going to last for a few years, I think.
Thank you. I do like your thought on this confidence, linking it to a theory, or at least linking it to sort of an understanding of where society is going. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs at this particular point have a real issue in understanding. Well, and the question is whether there's still a place for entrepreneurs in this new society, because it seems to be far more state-driven, far more organized, party-led, and all to the service of the people. And that's all good and well, as an entrepreneur would say, but I first want to make money. Good. That's just a remark on the side. Dr. Sarah Tong here.
Hi, my name is Sarah Tong. I'm with the East Asian Institute. Nice to see you after so many years. I think it's quite a useful way of thinking about this, 20 year. For the current one, I think the earlier period of the so-called sort of experimenting, when you do have something in your mind you want to experiment about, confirmed or denied, so that then follow with quite a broad marketization and liberalization. So for today's correction, as you defined 2018 onward, what are we looking at? Experiment of, anything in the mind of the leadership. So it's how do we define this one? What are we looking at this experiment for? What? The earlier question about the lens, are we going to have another 10, 20 years of experiment or correction? Sorry, the word you use is correction of the wrongs from over-marketization. So that's my question. What are we doing here?
Dr. Chen Jiwei. And then I saw a hand in the back there. Yeah.
Chen Jiwei from East Asian Institute. So you mentioned this fragmented regime and as well as this business political alliance in China. So it seems to me you refers to those interest groups. So it reminds me of those Mank Olsen's book, Rise and Fall of the Nations. He refers to many countries have similar dilemmas. When you have a vested interest, you have difficulties to have a collective actions. You yourself have a book about the disinterest governments. Yeah. Do you see the Chinese government or the party have a self, correction mechanism to address those from your own work and from the literature? How this self-correction mechanism works to address those vested interest issues? Thank you.
That's a tough question. And in the back, I can answer it maybe if you don't want to answer it.
Thanks, Prof. Alicia, member of the public. My question is about local government debt. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you think that China's going to rectify this problem, or is it I'm guessing it is a problem that we should be concerned about, that government debt has been ballooning through the years, maybe. I see, but not shaking his head a little, but yeah, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they're going to get more of it because of the stimulus, so they're about to get more debt,
right,
even from next year.
Right. First, Sarah's question. I don't know. This is my reading, right? I really don't know how the leaders think about the future. But my reading is that there is a kind of picture in their mind. That is, at least spiritually, China should go back to the 1950s. Okay? As I said, right? Everyone subscribes to the same theory, to this same idea, same direction, and acts accordingly. I think that's the picture in their mind. Okay, but of course I have a lot of doubts on that. Okay, interest group politics. I think it's more than interest group politics in China in the past. Okay, And like Hu Xueyan, it's not just an interest group of parties. Interest group of parties means I want to influence government decisions. Here, they want to swing politics, want to be part of politics. I think that's very different, right? You look at this guy, the Everbrand guy, what's his name? Xi Jiayi, right? That's the image. I'm the king of my kingdom. Okay, it's not the interest group of politics. No. Okay. So that's why this kind of business political alliance could not be tolerated. Okay. Local government, that's, my sense is that let's get by first. Right? Local governments are deeply indebted, but they're in difficulty. We have to save them first. So this time the government finally said, forget about all the discipline. Let's say we bail out the local governments first. Then after that, we talk about how to solve that problem. Okay, that's kind of a long story. I don't think we have time to talk about this. But right now, the urgent issue is to get the economy rolling. Okay, if the local governments are deeply indebted, the local governments don't have enough money to pay their employees. That's the problem. Okay, so that's why the central government needs to issue huge amount of debts to bail out the local governments again.
Right. Unfortunately, it's still earmarked for infrastructure, not for social services, not for salaries. But that's on the side. I do think Chen Jiwei's question is, and that relates to the 1950s. We all know that the 1950s was very unified in direction, and it ended up with an enormous crash. So the self-correction mechanism in China's politics. I know it's so hard. I don't expect an answer there, but it is one of the key questions that I think a lot of outsiders have. They just sort of say, well, okay, so this alignment of political direction and one leadership, that sort of sounds familiar in the past, and that hasn't always worked out. Whereas Yaxin Huang, he's got a fantastic project going on innovation in China, where actually he basically said, well, the peak of innovation was in the Tang Dynasty, in part because the state was so weak and in part because there was a lot of division. And very, very interesting thought. And to some extent, that's how the Western kind of thinking is, that competition and diversity of opinion brings innovation. We had a question very much in the back. Yes, sure.
Thank you for your presentation. And first,
you need to be closer to that mic.
Okay. I'm first a PhD student in LKY. My name is Gongming. And actually, you mentioned the decline of the health sector in China right now. And recently, the biggest real estate developer, Henda, claimed that bankruptcy in US, and a lot of people in China nowadays, they cannot live in the apartment they purchased because of a lot of reasons. And from your perspective, how to deal with this kind of situation right now, as we all know that the real estate economy is a very important part of China's economy. This is my question.
Here, and then we go to the back.
So, thanks for your It's really impressive. I'm also a student of MIA program of Lee School. So I want to ask that we all know there are side effects of these correcting situations. So are there any countering plans to fix it? Like, if we have this, we should have some compensation policies to counter this, right?
Sorry, I gave in the back, sorry. Yes. I already lost you.
Thanks, Prof. My name is Nishit. I'm a student here at LKY. As an outsider, if I may ask, what is, according to you, the ideal world order from Chinese perspective, let's say in next 20 to 30 years, and China's role in the global order?
That takes another lecture, I'm afraid. But nevertheless, I'm sure you're young.
Housing market, now, on the demand side, is already open, okay? So each city can decide its own policy. I don't think that's a lot of problem now. I think the problem is on the supply side. So banks still don't want to issue a lot of credits to those developers, okay? Because the old policy supposedly are still there, right? So those bank managers don't dare to issue a lot of credits to those developers. Then, of course, it's very difficult for them to finish their projects, right? So that actually suppressed the confidence of home buyers. Because there's still huge risks on the supply side. I do hope that the government will just openly say we're going to stop the old policies. But probably this round of stimulus is going to help, right? Local governments now has a lot of money. So local governments are going to set aside some money probably to finish those unfinished projects. That's going to build confidence of home buyers. Okay. Second question: the corrections have caused side effects. Are there any compensation? Not really. I think if you allow me to propose, I would say, yeah, the directions are correct, but we can think more carefully about the merits. For example, if we want to correct the bubbles in the housing market, then we have other merits to do that, right? Probably if I were the leader, I would say, hey, let's take 5 years to do that, right? It really needs time to do that. We cannot finish the job overnight, okay? China's position in global affairs, China is still committed to opening, right? So I don't think that has been changed. But of course, China is going to become more important at the global stage. And outsiders will see a more assertive China. That's almost for sure, okay? But I more see that as kind of proportional to the growth of the Chinese economy, to the growth of the Chinese capacity, right? Many people in China still say, hey, we should still hide ourselves, as so-called 韬光养晦. But everyone who reads Chinese a little bit of history knows that that's a hiding strategy, right? Even in 2011, we wrote a report to the government. I said, no more 韬光养晦, because it's impossible. The elephant cannot hide behind a tree. Yeah, elephant, right? So this is just proportional to China's capacity.
I fully agree with that. The issue, but that's a long time. It's almost history now. The issue was that a lot of the Western powers were not very comfortable that suddenly the elephant came from behind a tree and didn't know how to handle that, and to the detriment of international relationships, in a way a downward spiral. The reaction to that was not very positive. All right, we're almost out of time. I think I have time for one more question. No. There's more unique first questions, please.
Thank you. I'm Ziyan, an exchange student from Peking University. My question is about the theoretical trilemma. I want to ask, where do you think the direction will be? Because we know the Marxism in China is not the classic Marxism. It's already experienced localization. Actually, so the Chinese political concern about the principle in practice and some democratic rule is also included in the Chinese style Marxism. So the theoretical innovation, will it still be like the Marxism as the fundamental, or will we have a totally new thoughts? Things like that. Thank you.
I would say at the theoretical level, localization has not succeeded. You just read the textbook of political economy. Usually those textbooks are divided into two parts, right? One talking about capitalism, the other part talking about the socialism. For the capitalist part, yeah, the theory is there because basically that's a Marxist theory, okay? At least logically, it's complete, okay? But in the socialist part, you just see, the dots of thought, I would say. No coherent theory over there. Basically, there's no theory, right? There are only, in my opinion, just slogans, basically. Right? Theory means that you have to create a logic, a system of logic, okay? We don't have that. And I think we have to go back to change tradition because that's why the Communist Party has succeeded in the last 40 years, in my opinion. And that's how the Communist Party has followed, okay? So I think that's the only way out. In China, most people don't agree with me, particularly those people in the Marxist camp. They really hate me. I think the only reason is that I'm going to smash their iceberg. They're going to lose their job. Okay.
One person in the room that really agrees with that, and that is Professor Wang Gungwu, who wrote a book on China Reconnects, and that is really China reconnects with its past and takes a lot of the intellectual traditions from the empires of the past. And I think that is almost unavoidable, frankly. I come from a very small country that used to be a big power, and we still think about the 17th century and how good it was. So we call that the golden age. All right. Well, Professor Yao Yang, I think you have explained to us a lot about China, where China is and what China wants to achieve. And I think that continues to be necessary, frankly, for the Chinese audience, but especially for an international audience. I come out of this lecture a little bit more optimistic, but with still a lot of questions on my mind. And my biggest question, which I'd just like to leave you with, is indeed why China does not use this moment to create that common prosperity. There is so much resources that will be spent. There's so much opportunities, and that would actually help the economy, and it would help a lot of ordinary people. And we still talk about we still talk about Marxism, capital investment. That is, and I think that is a missed opportunity. That's my opinion, not yours. But we'd like to thank you very much for your lecture here and for being patient with our questions. Thank you. 谢谢.